Today is of course the 27th of June, which means one thing. Yes, there's a fresh batch of games on the Steam front page for the summer sale. So let's go through what's on sale on the front page and my recommendations, as we have quite a bit to get through. So let's start things off with a very, very popular game indeed that doesn't really need much explanation, and that is Life is Strange. This has been described by many as a Telltale game done right. It's not to say that Telltale do it wrong, because obviously they don't, but this is a sort of improvement upon that formula of a very sort of narratively driven, sort of choose your own adventure, point and click adventure style thing that is very much based around story, in characters. And while the writing in episode 1, as of course this is an episodic release, is a bit janky in places, and the teenage characters talk like what 40-year-old men think teenagers talk like, it's worth pushing through because the rest of the episodes are fantastic, and that janky writing does get smoothed out later on down the line. The first episode is 60% off, making it £1.59, so if you're not sure, just buy episode 1, and then of course, you know, if you like it, you can buy the rest at a later time. Episodes 2 to 5 are 50% off, making them £6.99, or the entire package is 50% off, making it £7.99. That is an absolute steal for this game, which does have sort of chances for multiple playthroughs of all the different choices that you can make and that sort of thing, but it is worth playing through at least once for the really good story and really good characters, so I would highly recommend Life is Strange. Next up is a game that's been on sale approximately 1 billion times, and that is Terraria. I doubt I need to say too much on this game, as not only has it been out for a long time, it's also been on sale more times than I can count. It is currently 50% off, making it £3.49. I have seen it cheaper than that, interestingly enough. I've seen it go down to about £1.50. So if you haven't, you know, if you really want to wait and get it as cheap as cheap, then, you know, that's up to you. But you can also get a 4-pack, so obviously it does have online co-op with your friends. So if you want to get some of your friends together to play some Terraria, the 4-pack is 50% off, making it £11.49, which isn't bad at all. So let's move swiftly on from the known to a bit of a franchise pack with the Dead Rising franchise. So naturally we have a Dead Rising collector's pack, which has an insane amount of content. It has Dead Rising 2, Dead Rising 2 off the record, Dead Rising 3, and all sorts of DLC packs for all the games. That is 70% off, making it £20.99, which isn't bad. However, the individual games are, of course, reduced. All the Dead Rising 2 DLC is reduced. I'm not going to go through that, but Dead Rising 2 and 3 are reduced. So Dead Rising 2 is 70%, making it £4.49, and Dead Rising 3 Apocalypse Edition is 70% off, making it £11.99. Out of those, I would say Dead Rising 2 is the best. Dead Rising 3 is a pretty, in my opinion, disappointing change of direction for the series. Dead Rising 2, off the record, is probably the best Dead Rising game to date. Of course, Dead Rising 4, feel free to make that statement wrong when that comes out. But for now, Dead Rising 2 is what I would recommend there, and it's a pretty cheap price for 70% off. You're going to get a lot of content for your money there. Next up is a game that is definitely for fans of puzzles with The Witness. This is, of course, the next game from the rather legendary developer Jonathan Blow, who, of course, previously made Braid. Now, I haven't played The Witness because, as you might know if you've watched any of my games on puzzle games, I'm pretty terrible at puzzles, and I have heard that this is a brain-bustingly difficult game for puzzles that is very much designed to make you think a lot of symbolism in the story, that sort of thing. And obviously this is all sort of second-hand from what I've heard, because again, I haven't played it, but it does have very positive reviews. I've heard a lot of good things about it. The graphics are pretty nice, and you know, I've heard it's a good game, but the only thing is it's not that much of a reduction at 20% off, making it £23.99. That's pretty expensive for the Steam sale, so personally I would wait on this one, especially if you're not too sure about it. Maybe check out, you know, videos and reviews and stuff, but I feel like this type of game, a video or a review, is not really going to do it justice, so in my opinion I'd wait on this one because it's not that hefty a reduction. Next up is another classic, Age of Mythology Extended Edition. Another game that needs no introduction, rather. It is indeed a classic. It has been upgraded with full Steamworks integration as well as a few enhanced features and all that. It's pretty cheap at 80% off, making it £4.59, or you can get the game plus the Tales of the Dragon expansion for 70% off, making it £8.09, or you can get the Microsoft RTS Collection, which has Age of Empires, Age of Mythology, and Rise of Nations all in one glorious package. That is in itself 80% off, making it £15.19. If you're into your sort of RTS, this is a classic for a reason. I haven't actually played this particular version, but it has very positive reviews on Steam, so if you're looking for something to sink a lot of hours into for not much cost, then this might be an option for you. Staying on a similar theme for a moment, we're going to move swiftly on to the giant game that is Europa Universalis 4. Now, of course, this is a game about building empires, controlling your nation, and, just expanding your empire. And from what I've heard, it is probably one of the more complex ones, and one that you're really going to need to sink a lot of time into. It's not my thing, and I haven't actually played it, so again, check out some reviews and videos from more informed sources than myself on this particular game. But it is 75% off, making it £8.74, or you can get the Extreme Edition for £9.99, again, 75% off. And there's all sorts of collections for this one, all of which are pretty cheap, including the Grand Strategy Collection from Paradox, which has some pretty nice games in it. Next up is a game that, despite some warning signs before it came out, actually ended up being rather good. Middleearth Shadow of Mordor. Now, this is a sandbox done right, in my opinion, because while you have a world to explore, it is a more contained size than, say, GTA 5, and as such feels more alive and more enriched than a lot of open world games. And not only that, you have some pretty well executed Batman Arkham style sort of fluid combat, but the thing that really elevates this game is the Nemesis system, where basically you can form grudges with the orcs and stuff in the game, where, if you end up killing someone's enemy and another orc, gets up getting a promotion, that actually affects it in the world. And say you get killed by like a general or something like that, he'll actually remember you the next time you go up to him. And there's all sort of naturally evolving stories, I guess, based on how you play, just because of this system. And it's actually really well executed, and this is a fantastic game, and it's a pretty nice price as well, as you can get the Game of the Year edition with all the DLC for 75% off, making it £7.49. Next up is Starpoint Gemini 2. This is a space strategy sort of simulator thing with what they are calling RPG depth. However, recently it does have mixed reviews. Overall, it is mostly positive, so perhaps there was a recent patch or something like that did things that people weren't a fan of. But we have Starpoint Gemini 2 being 75% off at £6.74, or you have the gold pack, which has Gemini 2, Gemini 2 Origins, and a bunch of other stuff. That is £6.87, so I guess if you're going to buy the game, you might as well get that one, because it's not really that much more. And there's also an Iceberg Interactive Cool as Ice bundle, which has Gas Guzzlers, Horizon, Nuclear Dawn, Star Drive, and Starpoint Gemini 2. So I'd say have a good read through the recent comments on the Steam reviews, as it does seem to be mixed as well. As I said, this is again not a game I've ever played. It does look very pretty looking at the screenshots, but not my type of game. I'm just a bit wary because of the mixed reviews recently, so just keep that in mind, and I guess do your research before you put down your cash. I know it's not too much, but it does build up, especially in the Steam sale. Let's move on to Helldivers. Now, for a recommendation right off the bat for this game, it is by the creators of Magicka, which of course was a fantastic game. Now, Helldivers is a hardcore cooperative twin-stick shooter, again from the creators of Magicka. You basically play as an elite unit called Helldivers, and you need to protect, the Earth, and then defeat the enemies of mankind, and yada yada yada. But it looks really cool looking at the screenshots, and it's pretty cheap as well. It's 40% off at £9.59, or you have the deluxe edition with a crazy amount of DLC with 40% off, making it £14.99. This does look like a really cool twin stick shooter with that special sort of arrowhead style twist. So I'm tempted to pick this one up myself, actually. It looks pretty damn promising. Next up is a game that, to be honest, I hadn't heard of before today because it's still in early access, and that is Squad. As you may guess from the name, this is an FPS, and is basically a 50 versus 50 multiplayer focused FPS that is aiming to basically get combat realism through communication and of course team play. For example, you've got vehicles, combined arms, large-scale environments, base building, and it even has integrated VoIP as well. Given how much they're pushing team play, it would kind of make sense for them to push that. Again, this is an early access game, so it's not really that great a reduction. You have the Squad game itself is 25% off, making it $22.49, but you might as well get this Squad and soundtrack bundle because it literally is the same price. If you already own the main game, then you can get the DLC for £3.59 at 25% off. So not a huge reduction for this game, but it's not really surprising given that it is still being worked on. Looking at reviews, this is actually a pretty decent game. Not my bag at all, to be quite frank with you. but it looks promising from looking at people's opinions and that sort of thing. Next up is a game that, of course, we're going to be getting the sequel to before too long, South Park: The Stick of Truth. Again, not a game that needs much of an introduction, but it is sort of older school RPG, obviously set in the South Park universe. It is one of the finest licensed games to ever exist. It is basically like an episode of South Park. The animation is on point, obviously they've got all the voices and that involved as you would expect, and the gameplay mechanics are actually really solid. You know, you basically playing a game in the game. Within the game, the kids are playing a game where they're pretending to be like, elves and things like that, and you're going on search for the Stick of Truth and stuff like that, and it's actually really, really cool. Not only makes fun of gaming and that sort of thing, it pokes fun at various things. Obviously it's South Park and has really cool gameplay mechanics as well. The combat is actually really interesting, and it's just really funny as well. If you like South Park, then this ain't a bad bet. Of course, we're getting the sequel soon, although just keep in mind, if you do pre-order the sequel, you do get this for free, but if you're not sure on that, then obviously this is a lot cheaper than pre-ordering the sequel. This is 75% off, making it £5.99, or the DLC is basically free at one is 59p and the other is 39p, so if you already own the main game, then perhaps now's the time to pick up some DLC. Next up is a game that has raked in pretty much a swimming pool's worth of money since it came out, and that is none other than Rocket League. This is basically football, but with cars. Essentially, you drive a car around a football field, you can flip to kick the ball, drive it into the goal, and obviously you're fighting against an enemy team, and you've got your own team to kind of back you up and that sort of thing. This is a game that's very simplistic at its core, but is very satisfying to play, and it's insanely popular for that reason. It's easy to pick up, it doesn't take very long to learn, and, obviously it takes time to master and all that, but it's just really, really fun, sort of cool, short bursts of multiplayer fun. If you just want to sit down for like an hour or so, or whatever, and just play a few cool games where you're going to just have a lot of fun and enjoy the mechanics and the gameplay and all that. And this is a game that you can't really go wrong with. There's a reason that this has been insanely popular. Now, the base game is 40% off, making it $8.99, or there's a 4-pack available for $26.99. As I said, this does have it's online multiplayer only. So obviously there's a lot of co-op, you can play with your friends, that sort of thing, and there's the deluxe edition as well, which has the soundtrack and a few other things for 40% off, making it £10.79, so not that much more than the base game reduced. Next up is a game called Sandbox 2, which is also in early access. Now, I have not played this or the actual original game, but judging from the Steam description, it actually sounds pretty cool. You create and destroy. You have a space simulator that even has real-time gravity and climate and, material interactions, collision. It even has Vive VR support, so if you want to create your own universe thing in Vive, then this perhaps might be an option. Again, this is still in early access, but looking at reviews, it seems like it's coming along pretty well. It certainly looks very pretty looking at the screenshots and the gameplay. And even though it is in active development, it is already being touted as a fully featured space simulator that is apparently better in every way than the original. And even though it's not a huge reduction at 20% off, the base game isn't that expensive, making it £15.19. Next up is a game I know nothing about, so I'm just going to stick with the price, and that is Football Manager 2016. Speaks for itself, really. Not a game I'm ever going to play or ever have played in my life, so there you go. It is 66% off, making it £11.89, and some of the DLC is reduced, but not the in-game editor, which is a bit weird. However, a couple of the things are reduced to about 34p, and the in-game editor is only £4 full price, so there you go. Alright, well that's it for the main page games. However, there's a few more games further down that I just want to quickly go through the prices for. Again, won't do descriptions as we've been doing the last few days, but I will just quickly go through and then I'll make my recommendations for today. So we have Underrail for $6.99, Way of the Samurai 3, $8.99, The Town of Light with £9.37. That took a while to get out for some reason. Move or Die is $6.59. Armello is $11.24. The Last Remnant is $3.99. Moon Hunters is $7.49. And this game's name I'm probably going to butcher, so do forgive me. It is, well, The Gate of the Firmament, but it's called the Shanwan Sword on the thumbnail here, so forgive me if the pronunciation wasn't great. We also have Shopkeep at £5.24. Faster Than Light at £2.09. Tales from the Borderlands at £6.45, 8-Bit Armies is £9.34, Dragon Age Ultimate Edition is £4.99, Atari Vault is £7.49, and Democracy 3 is £5.69. So there you have it. Obviously there's a huge amount of games on sale, but those are the ones on the front page. My recommendations for today... Oh, I'm very sorry. I just realised I missed one. I don't know how I looked right past it. I need to get my eyes checked or something. I'm so sorry. It is The Culling, which is an early access game. 15% off, £9.34. It does have recently mixed reviews and is mostly positive, and does seem to be a sort of survival thing, but it does seem to have a bit more of an unique twist in that they have sort of limited times to, you know, explore, scavenge items, craft and build traps and hunt and kill each other. Kind of seems like survival mixed with like the Hunger Games or Battle Royale, depending on your choice of film there. I would personally go Battle Royale, but that's just me. So, with that out of the way, somehow I missed that because apparently I have just like a blind spot in my eye that doesn't see it. Let's go on with my recommendations, shall we? Today I would recommend South Park: The Stick of Truth, as well as FTL. FTL is basically free, so you can't really go wrong. It doesn't need much of an introduction really, because, well, it's FTL, and again with South Park. And I would say at least check out the first episode of Life is Strange if you don't mind a game being very heavily focused on the narrative rather than the story. It's not a walking simulator, but it is very much, hey, a point-and-click adventure style thing in the style of Telltale, but with some improvements based upon that formula. So there you have it. Those are my recommendations and all the games on sale for the front page on Steam today. So thank you very much again for watching, and I'll see you next time.